Hey, Composite Gloves here. This is the 21st video in the Massive from the Ground Up tutorial series, and today we will be taking a look at the Oscillator tab. Some old information here and some new information as well. So, to get to it, it's actually open by default, or unless you've been messing around on another page and you restart to a new sound, it'll stay on that page. But other than that, just click Oscillator, OSC. And the first control you'll see here is the glide time control. So as we just talked about in the voicing in the previous video, it only matters if you're in monophonic or monorate, however you say that. So we're going to stay in monophonic. And transversal modes, it says on top, whatever. Equal is, so you have this control right here. This time control, it sets the amount of time it takes to glide between the notes that you hit, because you're only able to hit one note at a time. It doesn't do anything if you're in polyphonic mode. So equal is, if you have like a high note and you're going to a low note, it would take the same amount of time to go from a high note to a low note as it would to go from a high note to a very close high note, or from a low note to a very close low note. It's the same. But if you were to change, and you can change the time of that to be much faster, or very slow. Man, I'm not even going to sit through that. And now if you change it to rate, however, it is relative to how far apart the note is. So we'll change it to a pretty fast time. So when it's close together, it's pretty quick. But if they're far apart, you could tell that it's much longer. So if you were to make that even longer, versus closer together, and that is how that works. So that's the glide mode. I'm going to change it back to polyphonic. You have pitch bend. So if you have a keyboard with a MIDI controller or whatever, some people call them Hueys, and you've got a pitch knob on your Huey, you can, or a knob at all, something you could push up and down and it will snap to a position or something. Then you can assign it to the pitch, and this basically just sets the range. So this is up a whole step or down a whole step on your controller. I have your oscillator phase option, and if you turn it on, or you don't even need to turn it on, this controls, or I guess you do have to turn it on. So oscillator phase, you have this restart via gate. So assuming you're using the gate on your envelope, you turn that on and it will restart the phase of your oscillator in the same position every single time. So if you have if this is your phase, it would start, let's say it would start at the top every single time it would start there. And you can decide actually where that phase is, like how you can move it around here. In the oscillator tab, you just simply move this around. This is 90 degrees, 180, 270, and 360. If you don't know what that is, go just look up like phase, circle. Basically what they're graphing when they're graphing sound is they're actually graphing a circle. And I might get shot for doing this wrong, but I believe this is 0. If it goes up 90 and down's 270 and then back up, I believe it's 360. It's something like that. Okay, there's a graph thing, and as you move this along, you're essentially scrolling along this path, and you could set where they start. So if you have phase problems, or maybe you want phase problems, you can specifically do that. And an interesting note, you can actually do this for the modulating oscillator, which is rather unique. This is also useful for getting a real clean start every single time. So if we had a bunch of things going on, well, turn that down. If we didn't have it on, you see how the phase sort of lines up differently? Now the phase is the same every single time. And you can move these around too. So that's what that does, just changes the phase of where you start. Then you have this vibrato option here. And what this is, and it's automatically linked to your macro controller 1, so this knob right here. But what it is it changes the pitch of your oscillator. So when you select a note of your oscillator, so when you select a note and say this is on, I'll just turn on. according to the way they've mapped it here. And what this is the rate, so really slow. So what they've done here is this is how fast your pitch oscillates up and down, and the depth is the amplitude, how loud that oscillation is. So if you were to turn this way up, so essentially a tiny LFO. And if you're wondering what this mono thing is, go watch the video where I explain the LFOs, where I explain this mono knob, because it's the exact same mono knob, and in the performer and in the stepper, it's the exact same thing. It's so that when you play two notes, it sends out one oscillation to tell both notes how to behave. So if you're playing a chord, it essentially turns into not a tremolo per se, but because if you don't have that on, all your, which could be a cool thing actually, all your, what do you call that? Vibratos, all your vibratos are overlapping each other. They're not all in sync. And again, if this is off, if you hit all notes at the same time, it wouldn't matter because they're all being the same oscillations, signals being sent out all at the same time. But if you just hit mono, you're guaranteed safety, especially for like live performance people. So that's what that does. And then you have an internal envelope, which I discussed, where other internal envelopes are, such as the LFO tabs. And it does the same thing, only this internal envelope is only for this tab. So you could put it here, you could put it here, and that is where you can put it. You can't put it anywhere else, so unfortunately. And that is the oscillator tab. Have fun making sure your phases are all lined up and you're setting your glides and vibratos and stuff. And if you enjoy these tutorials, subscribe and have a blessed day.